All right. Welcome to the Mental Health Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Rachel Harrison, and with me today are Vander Meer and Antoinette Vasseur from Plants with a Purpose. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what is Plants with a Purpose?
It's usually what happens. We just stare at each other. We don't really know.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
So do you want me to talk about how that started? Because
Okay.
it's an initiative within our therapeutic horticulture program that we have here.
Yeah, start wherever it makes sense
Program
for
within the
starting.
program.
So
Okay.
we usually, in our other presentations in the past, we usually start by talking a bit about how Plants with Purpose came about.
Perfect.
And so Antoinette and I both work for Clearview Communities, and we are a residential treatment center here in Frederick. And we serve folks with severe and persistent mental health disorders. And we're trying to help them find ways to live the life that they want, live a life of purpose and meaning, and find out how we can teach them all the skills to help them live independently in the community. And so we have a very comprehensive program that looks at all these different dimensions of someone's lives and trying to help them learn the skills in those areas. And part of that involves a group program that we run here every day, Monday through Friday from 9 to 3. And as part of that group program, during the pandemic, we built a greenhouse. A big foundational part of our program is the community integration work that we do. So helping folks to find work, school, and volunteering opportunities. And we couldn't do that during the pandemic. Everything much harder, and we had to be insular. And so we started getting creative about what could we do here on campus to continue to serve people and help them explore purpose and meaning in their life and things like that. And so we built a greenhouse. We didn't necessarily know what we were doing when we built the greenhouse. We just knew that it was going to be a great opportunity for folks. Trying to figure out exactly how to do that was kind of part of the learning curve of it all. And so we built a greenhouse, and we hired someone to do horticulture therapy. And I think Antoinette and I can talk a bit about the difference we see, at least in horticulture therapy versus therapeutic horticulture. It sounds like we're just saying the same things, but
it does.
Slightly different.
Okay.
The main aspect really that we learned in it was horticulture therapy was very formulaic. It is a wonderful methodology that people use, and people are extremely successful in it, and the programs that do that are fantastic. But it didn't really work as well for us.
It's very rigid.
Yeah. A lot of evidence-based practices that we use, and we have groups that run on those, like cognitive behavior therapy or DBT groups, and those are wonderful, and those are more formulaic in the process. And we found that our residents didn't want more of those. They didn't want the formulaic gardening program, therapy using plants. We wanted the plants themselves to be the therapy, and to create a space that felt safe and welcoming and that didn't require a therapeutic intervention. It just was a place to come and garden. And so we went through this iteration of horticulture therapy, and it helped teach us a lot of things. And our residents, for every group we do, provide feedback for us about what works for them and what doesn't. And that matters to us because everything we do is for them. And so we want to design it around their needs. And that's when we went on a search to figure out truly what could we design that works for them? What's an informal approach? So started asking around for if anyone knew someone out there that was gifted and creative. I'm just gonna call on them. So gifted,
I know where this is
creative,
leading. Yeah.
and that was passionate about people just as much as they were passionate about plants and gardening and what working with plants can do for folks. And so we met a year ago, a little bit over a year ago now, and started having a conversation about what we just talked about. Here's what we've done so far, but we want to change. And I need help figuring out what that change could look like. And from moment one, it was like, just
Yeah.
creativity abounded, and we were able to talk about a ton of different ideas that we could do. And Antoinette has been an amazing addition to the team, but a huge part of all of the success here.
And when we met, I think we both weren't sure what we needed for this. I think when we sat down and talked, he said, we have a greenhouse. And I said, well, here is my skill set. And my background is in permaculture design.
Okay.
So I had my own business and I did a lot of permaculture design for clients. It's, you know, I was designing natural gardens, landscapes gardens by like observing the systems in nature. And then you plant and adapt to like what those systems need. And you observe nature to see how these would work. And I liked doing the one-on-one garden designs for a while, but it just kind of fell short. And then I started getting nonprofits asking me to build therapy gardens, which I know you guys get experience too.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I loved that. I loved seeing like, oh wow, like building these and people get to interact with these, and there's more of a purpose now to my design. I think when Aaron and I had met, that's where I had a few years under my belt of designing therapy gardens for a lot of local nonprofits. But what I missed was getting to design them and then walk away. I never got to like grow with that garden or get to experience like I got to meet like I've worked with detention centers building healing gardens for them. I've worked with Head Start in Washington County and built therapy gardens for the children there in all 4 of the Head Starts. And I love that, but then I walk away. So I was like, I would like my dream job would be to find somewhere that would be like home where I'm designing these, but then I actually get to interact with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get a greenhouse. So that was fun too. And you said a greenhouse, I thought you meant like a tiny degree. That is not. This is a very large climate controlled greenhouse.
Okay.
So, and I've always wanted to bring that connection with permaculture. What would that look like in a community and teach people that, but not about permaculture, but how do you use that to apply that into your own life? So we got to do that in the greenhouse, and it was an empty greenhouse. Maybe it had 5 plants. Maybe I had like 5
A
plants.
huge greenhouse with 5 plants. I love it. I love it.
So I had to get real scrappy. And so the therapeutic horticulture program here is not just the greenhouse. We have the greenhouse and we have off campus, on campus gardens. But when we started the greenhouse, we had 4 or 5 plants. And my background is with native plants. Native plants are very cheap. You know, like you could split your echinacea plants with me from your garden, and that's great. Then I walked into the world of like botanical indoor house plants, and I was like, these are wildly expensive. How do I build this greenhouse? And so, which is wild now looking now in the greenhouse, if I walk in, we have over 300 plants in there a year later. But we connected with the community. I started reaching out to the community saying, if you have plants that propagated plants or plant cuttings you could give me, or we started a plant triage, which is like, that was really how we started getting the plants. People giving me plants that needed a little bit of peer review for plants.
It was our first step in the process of filling the greenhouse. We said, okay, so how do we get some plants? If you have a sick plant at home, if you have a plant in your office that's not doing so well, bring them in. And then the residents get to be in the position of saying, okay, let's figure this out. What's wrong with the plant? What's causing that, and how do we deal with it? Which I think is all part of the process of how Plants with Purpose came about, because the residents are put in this position now where they get to not be the ones receiving the help, but they're the ones figuring out, how do I help and care for other folks?
It's a great way for them to learn about the plant. Like I can talk to them. And I think that's also another difference in therapeutic horticulture. Like they're meeting me where I'm at, and I'm meeting them where they're at. Because I'm not planning a thing that day. I am running a greenhouse and garden. So when you come up, you are jumping right in wherever I am today.
Doing work.
And I figure out where they're at. They can work and like he said, it's also coming into the greenhouse, you can work or not work. You can task or not. Maybe just being in that space is really serene and peaceful and just feeling I know that. I love being in there.
Yeah.
When they just want to sit, I call it a factory reset. When they come in, sometimes they just want to come in and sit and be there, and that's okay too. But the plant triage was really popular because that's how they were able to jump in and learn about the plants. Like that's a great way to really learn about a plant. They came in every day to check their plant, fertilize the plant, to care for that plant. And then for us, it was a great way for us to get plants into the greenhouse. And then we made a connection with, actually, they reached out to us, Green Valley Harvesters in Union Bridge. They have 2 greenhouses out there now. It's a nursery, and he offered to donate some plants.
Hmm.
I had been maybe all last summer picking up donations from plants from people. They maybe like donated 5 at a time. And I showed up at Green Valley and he had 70 plants.
Oh, wow.
I had my little Nissan Leaf, did not bring the van, and I was trying to shove all these plants. And he was like, you just let us know when you need them and we'll keep giving them to you. And I was like, oh, because so when we started, it wasn't for plants with purpose. It was just donating for the residents for the greenhouse.
Hmm.
Then we started having a problem of having too many plants. Also a problem to have, but we're not a greenhouse or a nursery where people come in and shop, right? So we didn't have a way to get these plants out. So I think that Aaron and I kind of went to the table and we're like, okay, what does this look like? Are we selling plants? No, that doesn't feel right. Like we didn't know what that would look like. And then I think it just kind of organically happened. We're like, well, what if instead of the residents getting kind of bored with constantly doing the same thing, now you're adding this purpose to the plant. And we pick each month, and the residents have buy-in in this, as Aaron said, they do with almost everything here at Clearview is a community. They selected, we took a list and we took like what their values were. And we made a list of some of the local nonprofits, organizations, businesses in the community. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit, any businesses that are doing something in our community as a way to say thank you to them. I know you guys have been a recipient of these plants.
Yeah, we have.
So
That's awesome.
now these plants that they're tending, so some of them are triage plants. Some of them are plants that were brought in that were very tiny baby plants that were donated by Green Valley. So they've all been tended to by the residents. And then every month they go through the greenhouse and they select the plants that they think are the quality, like what they want to go out the door to be donated, and they pop them up. They include the cards that have like the care notes, but with a letter of gratitude attached to it. And then so we've been doing this since August
of last year.
Yeah, August of last year.
Okay.
And part of how also like we created plants with purpose was when she and I have said we have this wonderful problem of too many plants. And Chris and Mallory at Green Valley were incredible and still are in helping provide all those plants for us. But we sat there and said we have a lot of plants, so what do we do with this? And part of it was, how does this fit also into the greater purpose that we're trying to achieve here at Clearview? And going back to one of the foundational elements of our work here is the community integration program. That's our residents are finding, what is my purpose in life? Do I want to work? And if so, like, what do I want to invest my time, effort, and energy into? And so they're already working with some of our team here on figuring those things out. So if we could tie this into that, maybe that'd be really a productive experience for folks. And so the residents now sit in the greenhouse, and Antoinette talks to them about what are the things you value. And so we start by talking with them about, what do you value? Do you value compassion? Do you value empathy? Do you value money? Do you value, corporate things? And we try to identify that with folks, and we find the values, we find the organizations that are living out those values in the community. And part of, I think, our own value assessment with Plants with Purpose is we want to be able to consistently thank folks that are doing those things that our residents value, and that we as Clearview also, find to be at our core. And not only do we get to give plants, and our residents get to be in a position where they are growing these and taking care of the plants and able to donate them, but they're able to figure out too, kind of help figuring out that weird mix of what's my place in the world, and how do I continue to find purpose and meaning in life, and how do I invest there? And they're identifying too that they absolutely have gifts and talents to be able to offer out into the space. So let's identify that and find you an opportunity to go do it. So Plants with Purpose has been fun in that, where we get to talk to organizations like Trauma Specialists of Maryland. We get to talk, with Mental Health Association, Hartley House, a lot of other organizations that we've donated to, because our residents find the values that they hold to be ones that they hold too. So now we get to talk with our community integration team about, okay, so what volunteer opportunities may exist there? What work opportunities?
Yeah, I really liked that part. That kind of, I think, fell into place after we created Plants with Purpose, when we realized, oh, there are some nonprofit or some other organizations that the community integration team has been trying to kind of get into the door with for volunteer opportunities. And so it is a really wonderful like community partnership for us too, to say, you know, here's who we are and we've seen what you've been doing and we just want to thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to ask kind of maybe it might seem like a basic question, but how do you find that plants are therapeutic for people? Because I've been thinking about this because there's a lot of power, I think, in how you're coming and bringing plants. There's a lot that comes into that. So I'd love to hear about just going to that basic, how plants influence people.
I think we'll have different answers on
Yeah,
this.
I
I'm
know.
really curious to see what you're going to say.
And I guess it just depends because I'll have residents that how the plants are helping them that day and where they're at, it's different. Some of them, it's literally just the soil. Touching, it's a texture, it's a sensory thing. So we just want to talk about like on a sensory level. I try to put a lot of the sensory plants on the table, like out in the center. I put a lot of sensory plants in our great room area for some residents that just might be sitting there. Because that can be, you know, a grounding technique too, just to have sensory plants. But like Erin was talking about too, taking care of something. Some residents, if I can see they're really struggling, I really encourage them to take a plant to their room. There is a tomorrow and there's a next day after that and you're taking care of something. I don't know. Yeah, now I'm like all these answers and I'm like, I don't know, Erin, what would you say? Because on so many different, I see how it affects them on different levels. Some of them it's just a hobby. Yeah. Right? Like some of them it's just they really enjoy learning something new or taking care of something.
And I'm not a professional plant person.
Almost.
I have not green thumbs, whatever the opposite of a green thumb is. But for me, the outdoors has always been a part of my life. And it's a perspective thing. I think we need to be able to step away sometimes from whatever it is that's occupying us. You know, for me, it might be family or work or, you know, the nonprofits I support. But it's stuff that's in my head. And so getting out into nature allows me this ability to reset, to breathe in fresh air, to allow myself to have some fun and just a difference of surroundings. And that's an incredible process that I go through when I'm able to do that. It just I feel lighter, I feel freer, I feel like I'm able to think more clearly about those other aspects of my life because I've gained a bit of perspective. And that's kind of how I approach some of this work as well, and a lot of learning, you know, from Antoinette. But I think it just having a garden program where you get your hands dirty is helpful. You know, I like to do yard work or go to the gym and just sweat and get dirty and those things, and that too can be extremely therapeutic. And I again think that that's a perspective thing. So we need to challenge ourselves in many ways. So residents not being in a place where you say, how do you feel? What do you think about this? But they get to create something, they get a change of perspective, they get an opportunity to, I don't know, just take a break sometimes.
And it was wonderful during the winter.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and even today on a rainy day, like I've had residents say they've never loved rainy days as much as they have since they've been able to come to the greenhouse, because the greenhouse has, we have twinkle lights in there. It's a botanical house. I mean, it looks like a jungle when you come in there. And then on the rainy, it's like rain on a tin roof, and you've got strung lights in there. Cause I like to add some things in there to make it a little funky. And then the winter, when everything is gray and dark and everything's dormant and there's nothing on the trees, you come into this space that just good. You're in this little rainforest and I feel very tucked and held. And that's my office. I'm really lucky that
you are lucky. That's a beautiful office.
Yeah. So just all the plants together, just that environment that it creates in there is very therapeutic. That's why I always tell any residents when we get new ones and I give them the whole elevator speech about, like, you know, our garden program in the greenhouse. I tell them, you know, I never expect you when you come in here to have to do. I just want like, you don't have to do anything. But if you did, I've got a lot to do. I always have things to do. But I just want them to feel like that's a safe space to just sit and recharge. just.
I like the way you said that. You don't have to do, you can just be. We have residents who go and draw.
Oh,
They
yeah,
paint, write
lots.
poetry. They love it.
We always have music on. Today was like 60s and 70s singer-songwriter themed. Yesterday was 80. Yeah.
That's great. It does feel like you're allowing them to have whatever relationship with the plants that feels best to them.
Yeah, some of them, I've had ones that come in there, they've never gardened or ever worked with plants, and they are curious, and some don't. Eventually they do. Some just want to draw, some will just grab a plant that they really visually like and just do still life drawings of plant. But they're still interacting with it, and they're still sitting in that space.
Yeah.
And I just love the different energy that's in there from all residents and the way that it interacts with them. And now we have an outdoor garden this year on campus. We have raised beds that are off of, like, outside of the greenhouse. That's new. We just put in the vegetables this past week. But I think
herbs and things.
Yeah, fresh herbs and stuff. So I really like that, because now that purpose for them is cooking from the fresh things that they can harvest off of the campus. They harvest things and we put them in the staff kitchen to share with the community, so staff can take them. They really enjoy harvesting the herbs every week and bundling them, and then because they know I send out an all staff email for everybody to, come get some herbs. We put out some tomato and pepper plants that they started in the greenhouse in January for people to take. And so they really love that, because it's not just the plants with purpose that's going out into the community and the nonprofits and the organizations, but they do a lot here on campus, back to the community as well.
And I love that tie-in from like this programmatic perspective of everything ties into each other and what we're trying to achieve. Like if we're trying to help, we have an occupational therapy department, and if we're trying to help people learn how to cook, and if nurses and dietitians are trying to help folks learn what's the right food to eat for you, your body, your own wellness goals. Now our garden program can feed into that as well. And raise your own vegetables. We can talk about the benefits that doing that might have for you, and then use those things to cook. And people, I don't know, I feel like even for my own life, if I'm growing my own vegetables, I like eating them more than if I'm buying them from the store.
Yeah. And don't you think they taste better? Isn't that a thing? They definitely taste better. Yeah, I agree.
And I can do a lot of one-on-one activities. So when Aaron was saying the difference between therapeutic horticulture and horticulture therapy, sometimes I will have a planned activity. It's very rare, but it will be like around harvesting. So like last year when we harvested cucumbers, then we were able to have like a pickling day, and they learned how to pickles. This year it's coming back bigger and better, because now they wanted habanero and jalapeno peppers in the garden. But I like watching this evolve. Like we made pesto last year, and I showed up with a recipe, and they all started changing. We just worked together, and the recipe has now changed and evolved to this new pesto that we're making this year, I guess. But I love it. I love collaborating with the residents on this, because I get a lot of compliments on this program, especially by this one.
Do well with that?
No. But I always do. I always jump in and say I didn't do it alone. I did it. I'm supported by all of my coworkers here, but also the residents helped me. Like when I walked into that greenhouse with 5 plants, and I mean, I had the experience. I know what to do with the plants, and I know how to do it, therapeutically, but they all helped. Like they really helped. This greenhouse and this program is where it is because the residents do.
Yeah, and to tie into that and what you said earlier, Rachel, we are a person-centered program. Everything we do is sitting with the residents saying, these are your goals, not ours. What do you want your life to look like? And how do we support you in achieving those things? And so for the garden program, if someone's able to go in and say, this is all I want out of that, perfect. Who am I to tell you otherwise? I don't have a set structure you need to follow. I just want you to enjoy the space. And if you don't, then we have other options for you to be able to do.
Yeah. Well, but then you're also sharing that with the community, which I think is amazing, to be able to say, let's bring a little bit of joy, wellness, inspiration, plant vibes to the community too. It's fantastic.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about that is this can be hard work. Mental health professionals, a lot of people in service professions, it can be really challenging. And so one of the things I get out of Plants with Purpose is we get to go to these organizations and they thank you. And that just feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one last thing. What's next for Plants with a Purpose? What's your vision? What are the things you're wanting to get to?
It's this blend of both of our worlds, I think,
Yeah.
of what we're calling permaculture therapy. TM. So we're going to trademark that.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's
All right.
It's no our thing, but it's. I'm not the permaculture
But
specialist.
he
She
explains it
is.
so much better.
So maybe it's just because I'm not great at it, but I think of permaculture as creating this wonderful ecosystem that you have to know your role within that ecosystem, and you have to know how all the other plants around it also support you and allowing you to do what you need to do, and also create that scaffolding around you and that support and the life that they give you. And so when I think of permaculture, I think of that ecosystem.
Mm.
When I think of therapy, when I think of what we can do as professionals to help people, I think we have to help them create their own ecosystem. That it's not about you alone, on your own island. It's how do you fit into the world? So what do you create around you? Who are those people? What are those contexts? Is it work? Is it volunteering? Is it finding family support? Is it friendship circles? Is it finding other things to go do? But what's your ecosystem that you need in your life?
I love that.
Yeah, and permaculture has 12 principles.
Nailed it.
Got it. And so what we're working on now is how to take the permaculture principles and marry them with a therapeutic principle and to create this amazing opportunity for our residents and creating that ecosystem for them.
And then getting to take them out and having like a tangible example. So I'll be able to, starting in July-ish, we're working on it, I'm still crafting it.
Of
But I'll
course.
take the residents out and so now instead of just group that we have now within a group, now we'll have more of like an individual one-on-one. Or the one example I use that I think is the best example of all the different principles and all the different design systems in permaculture is when I talk about guilds. That's one that I use a lot with the residents, is when you go out and you see like an apple tree, for example. If an apple tree is out there all by itself alone, it gets attacked by, you're gonna have to spray it, right? Because you get attacked by pests. You get fire blight, you get aphids, there's all these things. But what if you built a system underneath that tree with pollinator plants that bring in the predators that will eat, the insects that are affecting that tree, nitrogen fixing plants that feed the roots of that tree. There's so many different things that you can plant underneath that, like herbaceous plants. So in permaculture design, I'm designing these food forests or these guilds, which is how in nature if you look at like a forest edge, right? There's all these plants that are working together. It's a system. But then when I ask them, when we have like a reflection moment and I ask them, so what would that look like for you? What would your guild look like? What are the things that are working together? So that's just like one example of some of the 12 principles. So, but I get to being able to take them out and show them that in real life and say, okay, I'm gonna have a reflection moment. How does that work for you? And when I came in, I had the permaculture knowledge, and then I came in here and I was working in therapeutic design. I could never figure out why permaculture and like nature therapy, why this wasn't being done. So I'm really to create it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I see the metaphor completely. Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you both for what you are doing. I have a plant sitting right here on my table in front of me that I love every day. And I especially love the card that was written on by the resident who nurtured that plant, right? That's the best part to me.
And the plant cards have been a really wonderful way for them to learn about the plant. Because if they don't know about that plant, they have to look it up. And then I feel like right before we donate the plants, we end up having like a plant quiz. Because we don't put the cards on that plant until they go out the door. Our greenhouse it has it gets really wet in the greenhouse. So I'll have a stack of them and I'll just kind of call them out and they have to like find that plant. So it's been a fun like little plant trivia on donation day before they go out the door. And I didn't even see that one coming. So that's like another fun thing. Yeah.
Amazing. I love how this is unfolded. Well, thank you both for sharing about your program, and best of luck.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.